Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Cynthia, and I help direct the events here at Strand. For a little bit of history, Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astra Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until, after over 92 years, Strand is the sole survivor, still run by the Bass family, running 400 events a year, and still housing new and used books. Tonight, I'm excited to welcome Charlotte Nicole Davis for the launch of her book, Good Luck, Girls. Charlotte is a graduate of the New School's Writing for Children MFA program. She loves comic book movies and books with maps in the front. She currently lives in Brooklyn with a cat with a crooked tail. Joining Charlotte is fellow author Arvin Ahmadi. Arvin is the author of Down and Across and Girl Gone Viral. He grew up outside Washington, D.C., graduated from Columbia University, and worked in the tech industry prior to becoming a full-time writer. Please join me in welcoming them to Strand.
All right. Hello, everyone. Give it up one more time because it's Charlotte's Pub Day. Happy book birthday.
Thank you.
Happy book birthday. Oh my God, this is really, really exciting. And happy book birthday to Astra, Violet, Tansy, Mallow, and Clementine.
Yes. It's on. Okay, yeah.
They're on.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I absolutely devoured this book. This book has been described as Westworld meets The Handmaid's Tale. Mm-hmm. I would like to update that just because I'm sure that like X meets Y was written pre-Hustlers. But as I was reading, I was getting serious Hustlers vibes.
Okay, see, I haven't actually seen it yet, but everybody tells me I need to.
Okay,
so.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to. I mean, especially when it, like, you know, the early sections when, like, they're robbing the Braggs, and they're just being so enterprising and smart about it, and the friendships form. Yeah, no, I would make so that X meets Y meets Z.
Right, so that's the new
pitch. Yeah, the new pitch. So, you know, that's what I heard going into the book, but it's already getting incredible reviews from lots of other people too. So I'm going to read a couple of them for you. School Library Journal called this book, or said about this book, teen readers will devour this romp set in a fantastical Wild West styled world filled with a diverse cast of strong female leads. If you can't tell, I'm trying to make Charlotte as uncomfortable as possible because if there's one thing writers can't take, it's praise for their writing. But I'm a strong believer that they need to hear it. Kirkus, in a starred review, put it very simply, this one's a winner. And lastly, and probably most importantly, Megan on Goodreads wrote, I've typed and erased, and I just can't express how good this book was, besides that it was so, 8 O's, good. A whopping 11 all caps O's. Let's give it up for Charlotte and Megan on Goodreads.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, you got yourself a stan. All right, so now, you know, getting to the serious portion of this event, you know, just for starters, tell us a little bit about your book. Describe it to us in your own words, your 30-second elevator pitch.
Okay, so I should have this down by now, but I don't quite. But the idea is that I wanted to write about this group of girls in a setting kind of like where I grew up. So I'm from the Midwest. So I like the idea of writing a Western and seeing people like me in it. So it's about these girls, and they're, you know, fighting supernatural enemies. They're fighting human enemies. They're taking back what's theirs. And I just tried to fit all my favorite things in it. So there's a little bit of horror, a little bit of adventure, found family and sisterhood, you know, all the best things, hopefully.
Yeah. As a little girl, were you a big daydreamer?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about that. Were you writing stories then?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I got in trouble in 5th grade because I was reading when I was supposed to be paying attention. And, you know, my mom was like, well, at least she's reading. Like, it could be much worse.
You're saying she didn't hand you a laptop and say, go write Good Luck, Girls?
Right. Yeah, so it was, yeah, I've always loved writing. So it was just has been really fun.
Yeah. Now, was this? I mean, this is your debut novel.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the first book you had written, or do you have?
Oh, this is like number 7 actually.
Lucky number 7.
Right. Yeah. So I came out to New York to study at the New School's Writing for Children program, and that definitely helped me kind of tighten up my writing and my craft and figure out how to, work it into the YA space specifically. Yeah, I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I have so many incredible things to say about your writing and your craft. So shout out to the New School for honing that. Before though,
Narwhals.
I just want what?
Narwhals.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Narwhals.
Yeah, that's their mascot.
Oh, okay. I'm so confused. I was like, penguins? What was the seed for this book? Where did you get the idea for this book?
So this was a collaboration with Dovetail, and my editors are back there. And so we kind of knew that we wanted to do an idea about a group of girls in a fantasy Wild West setting. And like I said, that appealed to me because I was like, okay, I've never seen this really, and I want to see people like me in it. And so they were like, okay, we want a fantasy element, but we don't know what. And this one ended up being about ghosts because I kind of thought to myself, what if we took the trope of ghost towns and made it literal? So it sort of all spun out from that.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that in a bit. Oh, God, you're getting so ahead of me. No, but I mean, so that's really, so it was the Wild West, ghost towns, and then it came to Good Luck Girls. But there are so many pieces to this story. And that's one of the things that I loved about it, that it was, I mean, not only were the characters really rich and layered, but the world was, the themes were, there were so many heavy themes that I thought you wove into, I'm doing this again, I'm making uncomfortable by praising your writing. But seriously, I mean, but I'd have to say probably my favorite part of the story was the characters. I loved this cast of characters, and I just thought all of them were so complicated, and I just wanted to be friends with them. Like, I wanted to be like the sixth member. I mean, I want it to be Z. But what was the process like developing these characters? Did you know from the very beginning, like, their star charts, their favorite color, or was it more organic?
It was more organic. So I did know if it was going to be like an outlaw kind of story like this, I was like, okay, well, everybody should have a thing. So like somebody should be able to like track, and like somebody should be able to be a sharpshooter, and so I kind of like figured out first what I wanted each of their things to be. And then I tried to reverse engineer. It's like, how would this character come to have this skill, especially given like the situation they're in. So that was fun. Yeah. So it says on the arc and on the back that the medic, the protector. So it's kind of like how we started out.
Very clear here.
Yeah, just figuring out what we want everybody to really be passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you did that so well, that figuring out of the thing and then twisting it. Flipping it on its head. I mean, Violet immediately comes to mind because she's like, the suck up at the beginning. She is Miss Fleur's like favorite, but there's that initial surprise where she joins the girls to escape from the house and go on this adventure, and she keeps surprising you. And not only that, like you said, that kind of her ability to, like, the way that she fooled Miss Fleur, that's sort of her superpower,
right?
And what she's good at.
Yeah, she's like very good at just wearing different masks and lying to people, which is like, that's why they can never quite trust her.
Right.
But she was by far the most fun to write, because I think she was most different from me, honestly, and it was just kind of refreshing to write a character that's just kind of like selfish and rude. And
right.
Yeah,
no.
like, I don't know.
but that selfish and rudeness sometimes comes and helps them.
Yeah. She just tells it like it is.
Yeah. But I mean, I loved all the characters for different reasons. I want to get into, some other ones later. But let's sort of like take a step back and talk about the world a little bit. I thought you built this world so well, and so just in such a subtle way where I didn't see it happening. I couldn't see the mechanics of it. So an example that I have to read for you guys, because I just like underlined the shit out of this section. You were just describing the attic. You were describing the attic in the house where the girls hang out. And this is on page 24, and you just slip in casually this line: "At night when all was still, you would still hear a creak in the rafters where a girl had hanged herself with her bed sheets 30 years ago. And if you were fool enough to open your eyes, you would see her moon pale remnants too.
Yeah, that's the spooky part.
Yeah. It gave me chills because it was just in the middle of the section describing the attic. And I just thought that was a beautiful example of telling a story within a story. Mm-hmm. Was that a conscious part of your world building? And what were some conscious parts of your world building, things that you did to build this world?
I guess I try really hard to make it accessible to people who aren't necessarily huge fantasy people like I am. Like, I'm fine if there's a huge family tree in the front and all that, but I know some people need it to be a little bit more, I guess a little easier. I don't know. So I tried to make it kind of organic like that as best I could.
It was really digestible. I mean, I wasn't put off by any, like, there weren't like 5, 10, 15-page descriptions of the world or of an attic or of a, history or something. Right.
Yeah, and I definitely love books with really, like, thoroughly built worlds are my favorite. Like, Watership Down is a classic. Of course, Harry Potter. Anything where it's just like, you feel like this is a real place I can disappear into. It's just, like, really fun.
It makes it that much more immersive. You want to keep turning the pages because you don't feel like you're doing any work to kind of become a part of that world and learn about that world and its rules. And speaking of turning pages, this was an incredibly fast-paced story, really entertaining, but at the same time, you dealt with a lot of pretty heavy subjects. Sex work and sex trafficking, PTSD, generational pain and debt, and then, of course, the social and economic topics. This I found really interesting because I feel like there's that debate, like, should art be political? Do you feel like this is a political book? And just in general, what would you say to someone who doesn't think art should be political?
I think it's political for sure. I think everything is political, whether you read it as political or not. Things we perceive as normal are not necessarily, neutral. They have a stance as well.
Especially today, a lot of people's existence is political.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of how these characters are. They're sort of deemed the villains just for existing. Right. And I was trying to have my cake and eat it too, because, the thing is, I feel like a lot of times for characters of color, especially girls of color, in books, the only stories we have are stories about, like, suffering and just, like, being really oppressed. And of course it's important to talk about that, but I also was like, I do want this book to be fun. So I had a hard time striking that balance. I was like, okay, I do want to tackle the issues, but I also want to make sure I'm hitting all the tropes and that people who don't usually get to see themselves having fun are having fun in this book. So we'll see if that worked, but that's the line.
Trust me, it worked. And I love the idea of, like, these girls who've been living, a large part of their lives in this house, sort of trapped, all of a sudden get out and kind of they're allowed to be so much more than that. They're about to be themselves. I think you do that with this book too, where, a marginalized story doesn't just have to be about that marginalization. It can kind of get out of that sort of those confines too.
Right.
So, it's really fast paced. It's an adventure. I honestly, I felt it. Like, the way that the book is, like, propelled forward and the girls are just sort of, like, on edge the whole time and they have to keep moving. Like, that pacing was just so there. I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm really just fishing for, like, craft advice here because I was so thoroughly impressed with, like, all of the craft elements of this book. So talk to me a little bit about pacing. How did you and your editor work together to keep the story moving forward and have all these elements work seamlessly?
I definitely feel like my editor's helped a lot with that because I'm the type who can, like, linger in a description forever, or just, like...
Yeah, I knew you had a whole nother book about that attic.
Right.
And you were, like, holding yourself back from giving it to us.
Right. So we were trying at all times to be like, okay, we do need these emotional beats in between and character building beats, but we need to make sure there's always in the background the sense that they have to keep going, and that they're never really safe anywhere. Yeah. And again, it goes back to, like, but I still want it to be fun. Yeah. So it was hard, just, like, striking the balance of, danger, but also they are kind of free for the first time, and they're finding themselves. So it's both good and bad.
Yeah. But it sounds like you had your North Star, you had your guiding light, and so anytime you wanted to linger, I'm sure it was tremendously helpful for you to know so much about the characters, the situations, to be able to describe a rock in dozens of pages. But yeah, you kept the story moving. I guess speaking of really intense subscriptions and knowledge, I could tell just reading this book that a lot of research went into it, and it was really cool to get to the acknowledgments and then see you actually kind of thank Eric Foner and some of the historians and nonfiction books that you'd read. So tell me a little bit about that process, because the hideaway camps, the times that they like robbed these rich brags, like I could feel, I just had this hunch that they were rooted in some kind of like historical event or historical accuracy,
Yeah. So I went to Dodge City, Kansas, which is like maybe a 3 to 4 hour train ride from my hometown. And for those who don't know, that's where like Gunsmoke was. It's like this old Western just spot. And I took hundreds of pictures. I talked to the museum people there. I got a lot of my research books there. And it's just really good to see the actual, the physical, like a main street, and to see physically like what a general store looks like and what the outfits look like. And it's also just very surreal because there was a time when this was like the Las Vegas of the country. It was like this, wild, debauchery, and like, everybody was trying to get there. And now it's just like a truck stop. But
yeah.
it's just interesting. I was like, really, it's like, this is a very interesting history that I didn't really know about.
Yeah.
And then getting into the historical part, I was like, there's a lot of history there that's been erased. So, cowboys, for example, it was like a poor man's job. So it was mostly immigrants and black men, a lot of indigenous men. So it's like the idea that it was like all these John Wayne types is not really accurate. And there were a lot of women out there because, this is the kind of space where they could run a business. Political dissidents. If anybody was like deemed a criminal in any way, they would go where there was no law, and that's where they could be free, kind of. So
yeah,
I wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just in YA and in books and media in general, we're getting so many more of those untold stories, right, that were hidden from history. Oh man, so I could, much like you, I could linger on that research question because I have like 5 side questions, but I'm gonna actually like what you're talking about with women and black people and queer people actually having been there. That's really interesting to me because I thought, like, I think it was School Library Journal that, was sort of praising the cast for being so diverse. And I loved it too. And so the whole reason that I brought my arc up here is just so I can show you one Post-it note from, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but just page 155, I had to write, in all caps, my queer heart, it flutters. No spoilers, though. So that ties into my question, which was, one thing that I loved about this book, the cast was really organically diverse, but I loved the idea of the bedtime story and how that drives pretty much their whole mission, their whole adventure. And it's this bedtime story that Astra herself believes to be made up. But as certain events happen, she starts to believe that maybe it's real and maybe, this person who can help them does exist. So that really struck me. And it's related to my queer heart fluttering, I swear, because it's that story, that bedtime story is a story of getting out. And Astra just doesn't believe it. She thinks it's too good to be true. I think as marginalized people, as queer people in general, that is so often the case, and it takes, it's like, I think it's just like, we all have that moment where, growing up, you're in that house, in that sort of like trapped setting somehow, some way, where you're like getting out, it's too good to be true. And then all of a sudden it clicks, whether it's meeting a person or going to New York or whatever. Was that your intention? And just in general, sort of tell me about, the importance.
I feel like you're finding things I didn't know.
And I feel like I'm taking over. I'm getting all up in my feels over here. This is your event.
Yeah, I was like, this is a really good analysis. But yeah, it definitely. So Astra's character is kind of afraid to let herself hope. She doesn't want to get hurt. And that's for the big difference between her and her little sister, who's much more optimistic and kind of carefree. And partially it's because they've had different experiences. But it is sort of about her, learning. It's like, okay, it is okay. to open yourself up to other people and to, maybe to hopes. If you've got a situation that you should take the opportunity and not just assume it won't work. But yeah, it's definitely. She's very cynical at the beginning, and I hope she's a little less so by the end. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I love that contrast between Clementine and her sister. And yeah, I think the bedtime story really. I think just with each of them, it was so interesting how they perceived it, how it drove them, or they just kind of like went along with it, but then eventually maybe came around to it.
So I'm going to open it up to audience questions in a bit, but before that, I have a lightning round of questions. And the lightning round I have not shared with Charlotte, so we're going to get her just on the spot.
I don't know what's going to happen.
All right, so this one could be easy. What's your dream cast if you had to cast the characters in your book?
So there's this actress in the Netflix series 3%. I don't know if anybody watches it.
The Brazilian series?
Yes. I don't even know if she speaks English, but if she wanted to play Astra, I feel like she'd be really good in that role. Her character's name is Joanna. I don't remember her name actually. I need to look that up. But I was watching the latest season, being like, yeah, this is like a perfect Astra. And then
it's funny. I totally relate to that because there's a character in the Spanish Netflix drama Elite who I would want to play my current queer Muslim protagonist.
Yeah.
But also doesn't know if he speaks English well enough.
Right. And then the others I haven't quite thought of. I mean, they're kind of a younger cast than most of the actors I know. So I feel like maybe I ask my teenage sister. Maybe she knows who's up and coming. But
phone a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your AM screen name?
Oh.
That really took a turn.
Charlie Girl 820. Charlie Girl 820.
Charlie Girl.
Yeah.
820. Is there?
That's my birthday.
That was your birthday.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite book you've read this year?
Oh, Kitty and the Ninth. Okay, so that's this tour over there. So it's another tour book.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear. But the arc for this book was just laying outside my apartment building a couple weeks ago. I'm serious.
It's really. It's about lesbian necromancers in space, and it's just a very quirky voice and really cool world building.
Yeah.
I want to read it again immediately. It's adult, so not if you only read YA, this is a different vibe. But
Right.
I definitely enjoyed it.
Lesbian necromancy, sign me up.
You can't go wrong.
Yeah. Book you're looking forward to?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Oh, the toll, whatever Neil Schusterman's third book is in the Scythe series.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrity you would probably pass out in front of if you met?
Ooh. Maybe Samira Wiley. I feel like she's my style icon. So
All right, not to flex, but I did run into her on the street once. And I stopped her and I was like, oh my God, I love you. You're an incredibly talented actress. I love you. And she was so cool. This was on Madison and 22nd. And she was just like, thanks, man.
I'll just lurk there for as long as it takes.
Oh my God, sorry, Tor. Charlotte's missing the rest of her week of events. You can find her. All right, these ones really quick. Harry, Ron, or Hermione?
Hermione, of course.
Beyonce or Taylor Swift?
Beyonce.
And do you accept Lizzo as your Lord and Savior in sickness and in health till fuckboys do you part?
Yes.
All right, and now questions from you all.
How different was the first draft of the book to what was finally published?
That is a very good question. I think it just got a lot longer, mostly. There were a couple of scenes I insisted on adding. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say there's a bank robbery. And it wasn't in the original outline. I was like, I just really feel like we need a bank robbery. And that took several months to work in. But so things like that. And just as we learned who the characters were, I tried to make their backstories a little bit more fleshed out. Yeah.
What was the most surprising thing you learned in doing your research?
Ooh, probably that Cowboy statistic, because I quote that a lot. It's I think 35% were Black or Latino, and if you include everyone else, it's almost 50% were non-white. But yeah, I read some really cool books about like women who were gamblers and like bandits. And so it's just really cool seeing like it really was, a place where you could be independent if you were willing to be also a criminal, I guess.
Which character do you identify with the most?
Definitely Mallow. So like I said, Viola is my favorite to write, but Mallow is like the one I think I would be most friends with, because she's kind of like genderqueer. She's very like she kind of jokes. That's her coping mechanism. She's like kind of likes to get into fights, but she's really small. So I don't know. Yeah, I enjoy writing her.
Yeah, no, Violet. That's funny because I loved Violet. I think there's another sticky note in there that's just I fucking love Violet.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to be friends with her because she's all about masks, right?
What's she up to? No one knows.
Yeah, no one knows. And like, is she being real with you? Is this another mask? Like, as someone who just called a friend out the other day for being fake, like, we're good. I just don't know if I could deal with that.
Yeah.
If you could write in any other genre that you haven't written in before, what would you write?
Maybe just straight horror. I love horror movies, and I love like when I was growing up, I loved like Goosebumps and Coraline and like just spooky stuff. So I'd love to like. There's a little bit of spookiness in this, but it's definitely not the focus.
Can you set it in the attic, please? I really want this attic book, and I'm just haunted by that line, and will forever be haunted.
What was it like to like get that first like copy of it published and like in your hands?
It was just very surreal. I feel like I was like my own way of like protecting myself is just to be like, oh, let me like not get too excited because then I won't get too like hurt if like something goes wrong. But so it was just like very weird that I was like so distant at first, and then it does kind of hit me like this morning. I was like, oh wow, this is like this is actually happening. Yeah.
Related to that, I want to ask, what's been your favorite part so far of the publication process?
Ooh.
I mean, you've
I was really fortunate enough to go to BookCon, and it was just really good interacting with readers, and meeting a lot of other cool authors as well. Like, it's just some very cool people in this community. So yeah, I look forward to more of that. Hopefully they enjoy it and they have questions like this.
I hear they're sending you on like a month-long tour.
Yeah, we're running around.
Yeah, tour. You're really making your work. Again, like Madison and 22nd. If you need a hideaway. Yeah.
I was really interested in that, like, even though there's a really diverse cast, like, the prejudice or racism is based on the characters' shadows, and I was wondering how you came up with that.
That's a really good question. So this goes back to me, like, being like, okay, I don't want this to be a traumatizing story. It's like I didn't want it to be fun, so I was like, okay, let me make the racism in this be based off a fantasy element, so I don't have to include actual anti-blackness or any other kind of like real world racism. Like, it's based off this fantasy element of like whether or not you have a shadow, and it's definitely, the parallels are clear enough, like you can see what it's inspired by, but the characters don't have to deal with the exact same oppression that and historically they would have had to deal with.
What drew you to writing YA to begin with?
I think I'm just very young at heart. Like, I feel like I kind of got stuck at maybe 14. And I never really wrote older than high school age characters. Maybe one day, but it doesn't feel quite as natural. I don't know. I was writing the kids.
Yeah. Well, I think Lee Bardugo, I remember said in a panel once that she believes that everyone is still and will forever be their teenage selves. Mm-hmm. And that just as we grow up, we put up all this armor,
right?
So I that 14-year-old self, like, own it. That's
right.
What do you hope young readers learn from this book, maybe about themselves?
Ooh.
From this
book? I guess I want them to kind of like see through some of the like let me think how to say it. So just like there are things we take for granted about society that you don't necessarily have to take for granted. I want them to kind of see through it, and realize how they can change it based on their own. They do have power, and when they work together, they can overcome these things. And nothing has to be set in stone just because it's the way it's always been. Yeah.
What Hogwarts house would you support the girls?
This is a good question. Okay, let me think. I think Astra is a Gryffindor and Violet is a Slytherin. That seems like it seems easy. I guess I could put Tansy in Ravenclaw, but I could also see her in Hufflepuff. I'm a Hufflepuff, so yeah.
Which means Mallow has to be a Hufflepuff.
I think Mallow is definitely a Hufflepuff.
Oh my god.
Who's left?
Clem is actually kind of.
She's hard.
Place. She could be like a Neville-y Gryffindor.
Yeah, that's kind of how. That's kind of how I see it. I think Z is also a Gryffindor.
Yeah.
But yeah, she could go multiple directions.
But yeah, the hat would struggle with Clem.
Right, hat stall.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Do you have any advice for other new authors, upcoming authors, people who want to be authors?
Yeah, let me think. I guess I really couldn't have done it without my writer friends, and part of that was from, finding a community through the new school. So I definitely think, even if it's just like online, find some people who can look over your work, and who really are passionate about it. And then just to be really, really just nice to yourself. Like, I think writers are very hard on themselves, and it doesn't actually help. So it's just like, okay, what matters is getting the book done. Don't worry about like making it perfect the first time. Understand that no book is perfect. I really have to still kind of like think of that myself. Yeah.
I think this book is pretty close to perfect, but
Yeah.
but no, I get it.
My dad has a question.
So what was your inspiration for Z? I didn't hear much about him.
Wait, my aspiration? Inspiration. Well, I was like, they were black cowboys. So like his character is a range man, which is kind of like a cowboy. And I was like, okay, well, I really want to see this character type, but with a black boy. And so he's adventurous, and like he can build fires and all the, I don't know, those things. He just like, and it's just like we also wanted, there to be a male character who was just like not toxic masculinity. So yeah, so he's there to sort of represent, I guess, an ideal.
Right.
Yeah.
You cast out on him early on, and you do it so well. Like we don't know if we should trust Z.
Right.
And even when he tells us his story, there are still those, some of the girls are like, okay, but is he telling us the truth?
Right. Because you can't trust anyone.
I know.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. You have to keep turning the pages because I'm just like, I need to know. More questions?
Hi. As a fan of Steven Universe, could you compare any of your characters to the Gems?
Ooh. I wrote it before I discovered the show, so I don't know, but now that I like know the concept of fusion, I don't know if anybody watches Steven Universe. I'm like kind of obsessed now, but like now that I do know that concept, it's something I think about when I write characters. I'm like, okay, like how would I personify their relationship as a whole new person? Like, and that kind of helps you tell them about them as individuals as well. So I'm like really grateful to the show for that, for giving me that idea. No.
What has been the hardest part of the publication process for you?
Oh, just getting things done on time. Yeah. Yeah, I turned in the draft for book 2 like last night at 11 something. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I just love the idea of like the night before your big day, like
Yeah.
your debut book release, and you're like, must finish this.
I was like, I really can't go into book 1 and not have this other one done yet. So.
Which I guess begs the question, what's next? I mean, there's book 2.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know what to say without spoiling, but I guess I could say that you will see more of the world. So, you know, the conflicts get bigger, and the scope gets bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you working on any other I know you just turned in this draft like yesterday,
Yeah.
but you know.
I started some stuff in my grad program that I want to get back to. And then, yeah, I don't know. Beyond that, just got to see what happens.
All right. Any last questions before we sign some books? All right. Well, thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Congrats again.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming out here, because it's just like so nice to see these friends from so many different parts of my New York life. And this is like a chilly city sometimes, so this is like a very warm event. Thank you all for being here.
So it looks like we're going to pull out that table over there. Charlotte's going to sign books. Let's do a picture.
I'm getting pictures.
Everyone,
FYI.
hold up your thumbs, hold up your books. Say Charlotte. Yeah. All right, cool.